This is Lou Katsos, and we're here at the Russian Tea Room, and we're having another one of our development, design, and construction panel discussions. This one is the fall panel discussions, and it's called Sisyphus Unbound. We have a spectacular panel of experts in the industries, from architecture to development to city planning to all aspects of the industry. So welcome and enjoy the event.
Donna Olshan. It's pretty exciting because development is changing all the time in New York, and we hope this will be an interesting panel which will give us all the new ideas and what's happening in the community.
Thank you very much. My name is Jay Badame. I'm the president of AECOM, Tishman and Hunt. I run all our operations in North America. We have around 2,200 employees just in construction. AECOM is worldly, 91,000 employees. On construction, we have 300 projects. So very happy, and whenever Lou asks me to do something, Lou used to be my boss, so of course when he calls, I answer. Thank you very much. God bless.
Good evening, everyone. We're here at the Russian Tea Room for another wonderful event by EMBCA. Hello from Faith Consolo. Stay on tune for the program.
Lou Katsos asked me to join him tonight on the panel, and I'm honored that he asked me to join. And I hope it's a very fruitful discussion with the other panelists and everyone else.
Tassos Papathanassiou from Langen. Another good event that Lou put together. Looking forward to the speakers, looking forward to find out about the state of business in New York, and looking forward for more events from Lou.
Well, good evening. My name is Ken Knuckles, and I am delighted to be invited to once again to a discussion about design and construction and development in New York City. It's always a stimulating topic, and I hope I can contribute.
Lou, thank you for putting me on the panel.
I'm Todd Poisson from BKSK Architects. We're thrilled to be here to present maybe some ideas about passive house and some the new things that are happening in multifamily housing in Manhattan. We just picked up a great award for 466 Columbus in that category of new construction for multifamily, and hoping to push the envelope for a passive house and sustainable design in New York City.
As you all know, those of you who have been here before, every few months we have a design, development, and construction panel discussion. The panel discussion has leaders in the industry. It's totally unscripted. I have no questions. I don't know what I'm going to ask. I don't know how they're going to respond. I don't know what they're going to say. I don't know what we're going to do. But we are going to talk about development, design, and construction. And the reason why we have these panel discussions is just to simply find out from the experts what's happening in the industry right now, and also what do they think is going to be happening in the near future. That's all we can do. Now, every once in a while, I do have a Hellenic mythology orientation to these events, and the reason why I do it is because people ask for it. They say we actually come here to find out, what these things are all about. The reason why we're calling this Sisyphus Unbound, and nobody has written a story of Unbound because he's still doing that. He's still rolling up the rock up the mountain, is because Sisyphus was a little bit different from the panel that we have today. This particular panel not only rolls it up the hill, they push it over the hill. Okay, so this panel is unbound. Okay, it represents the extreme opposite of Sisyphus. So it's a wonderful panel. It's a great panel. So I'm going to start really with Jay, and everyone here is really from a different aspect of the business. Jay's on a construction management side. Faith obviously is on a commercial leasing side. Ken Knuckles is on the city planning side, and also in UMEZ, the Upper Manhattan Empowerment Zone. We've got Ron Lattanzio that deals with a lot of issues of the city, including site safety. Chuck Olivieri will represent the development side, and Donna, the goddess of luxury real estate, will represent the residential side. And we have Todd, the architect of the hour, of the moment, of the year, because there was a fantastic article about him actually in the New York Times this particular month, and we'll discuss it. So, if we can, let's start with Jay. Jay, tell us what's happening on your end of the business, and some of the exciting things that you're doing now.
So I'm president of AECOM, Tishman and Hunt, oversee all the operations in North America. That's around 2,200 employees, 300 projects. We're a publicly traded company. Our parent company is AECOM. It was Frederick R. Harris. They bought us in 2010, and they have 91,000 people around the globe. So I run the construction division of North America. In the U.S., we see New York is stable. The condo market's flat. Rentals are okay. Commercial office building probably above average. Institutional probably above average. At Tishman, we were 100% union. We now, like everybody else, we are an open shop contractor. We have relationships with Local 79, and that's what our collective bargaining agreement probably expires the end of June of next year. So as the world goes towards open shop, our clients dictate really where they want us to be in the market. So AECOM also owns LBG, which is a 100% non-union company. So again, we have to go to where our clients are. The U.S. is very strong. LA is busy. Boston's busy. Chicago's soft. DC's soft. Texas is strong. But generally speaking, we have a very good backlog. We're doing a lot of office buildings like One Vanderbilt. These projects go on for 3 or 4 years. They're multi-billion-dollar projects. They're GMPs. They keep me up at night. But the good news about Tishman is that we have people who have been here for 30, 35, 40 years, and they're the rock of the company. So I'm privileged to be the leader of the company. And Lou, anytime you call, I'm here. Lou used to be my boss, so when he calls me, I come.
Faith, of course, is she says the queen. But
I'm Faith Consolo. I'm the chairman of the Commercial Retail Leasing and Sales Division at Douglas Elliman. Retail's my detail. So I'm also here to tell you that retail's not dead, despite everything you're reading, despite that you're walking the street and seeing all those available signs. That, yes, I agree, New York is stable. It's the center of the universe for us. It's the shopping capital, it's the financial capital, it's the arts capital, it's the tourist capital. And do they want to open a store in Omaha or New York? So yes, it's New York. And despite everything else you read, only 8% of sales is done online. So from a bricks and mortar view, it's very solid, but very confusing. This year's been very challenging because the rents had 10 years of up. The rents became beyond the market. There's too much product that came online and it confuses people. Even sometimes I'm confused, but not for long. And there's just too many options. And even though retailers are expanding all the time, it's about the choices. And that's where the confusion is. I do feel, I don't want to say rock bottom because I never talk about that. I never say recession. I always say we're in a moment of change. But I do feel we might have turned the corner. I can't give you the year-end predictions. The rents are reasonable. The options are there. And for the first time in a really long time, I see the owners, the developers, and the landlords in all the projects besides Main Street working hand in hand with the retailers, and that's good news.
Good evening. My name is Ken Knuckles. As Lou said, I'm the president of the Upper Manhattan Empowerment Zone Development Corporation, which is an entity that's been around for about 22 years, dedicated to economic development and revitalization in Upper Manhattan, which we define as north of 96th Street to about 218th and Broadway, from the Harlem River, basically to Broadway, Amsterdam Avenue. Faith Consolo knows this market. She's very, very active up there, a lot going on. But the other hat that I wear, which is arguably more pertinent to the discussion this evening, is I am one of 13 members of the City Planning Commission. I am in fact the vice chair, a role that I have occupied for about 15 years. There are 13 members of the City Planning Commission, 7 of whom are appointed by the mayor. There are 5 additional members appointed by each of the borough presidents, and then the public advocate has an appointee. So there are 13 members. The City Planning Commission really considers projects that are built other than as of right. which is to say if you want a zoning change or you need a special permit, you want to build larger than what the as of right or building code permits or dictates for a particular site, then you need to come to the City Planning Commission. These days, and this has been the case for really the past several years, we're very, very busy. We are principally consumed with rezonings. During the Bloomberg administration, there were about 125 to 130 rezonings. About 40% of the city was rezoned. A lot of repositioning of not only places like Midtown Manhattan, but really the outer boroughs, where we looked at neighborhoods with strong transportation that were considered to be underbuilt, and we provided more density while preserving the context of neighborhoods that were further away, principally 1 and 2 family home neighborhoods where removed from transportation, where there was contextual zoning imposed there to preserve the context and the character of those neighborhoods. More recently, and currently as we speak, we are dealing with a number of rezonings. We have just passed on the East Harlem rezoning, the impetus of which is to bring about more affordable housing, which has been a high priority, perhaps the highest priority of the current administration. Mandatory inclusionary housing means that if you want to build other than as of right, if you want additional FAR, you have to provide, residential of course I'm speaking, you have to provide affordable housing. And there are various levels of 25, 30%, which is, defines what affordable housing means. The City Planning Commission is a regulatory body, but at the end of the day, I think it's an economic development agency, because it really exists to not only govern the built environment, but to, in many cases, reposition the city of New York to be more competitive. Jay mentioned 1 Vanderbilt. Well, 1 Vanderbilt is under construction because of the rezoning that the City Planning Commission passed on. I think it was in, I guess around early 14. It was early in the de Blasio administration. We had tried to bring about a rezoning of East Midtown, which is the city's oldest business district, but has about 75% of the buildings are about 70 years old or older, and a lot of them are out of date. Well, Bloomberg couldn't do it, the Bloomberg administration couldn't do it, we couldn't do it, principally because it was undertaken in 2013, in the last year of the Bloomberg administration. Bill de Blasio, under Carl Weisbrod's leadership, and now the new chair, took another cast at it, and we were able to rezone that particular parcel that will include 1 Vanderbilt, but is the template for East Midtown, which is going to allow owners of property to build bigger buildings in that particular area so as to be more competitive. But in order for you to do that, you're going to have to contribute mightily to the public realm by providing resources for transportation and parks, etc. I think it's public knowledge, so I don't mind saying it. SL Green contributed over $200 million to public realm improvements around Grand Central Station. So that's going to be a transformational project, and one that you may see replicated to some degree, depending on the market conditions in East Midtown. So the City Planning Commission really, obviously it deals with application by application, but writ large, we are an economic development agency that looks to make the environment in the city more livable, but always seeking to make New York City more competitive.
Ron, in terms of the competitiveness, you're involved obviously with a lot of agencies in many different ways. Go into some of those issues in terms of what's happening right now in the city.
In the midst of the biggest change in the labor market and the construction industry ever, About 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I'm blessed because we have over 700 people in CRSG. We're going to top 160 billion this year. We opened an office in Miami that we were able to sign and take advantage of private provider law. And it all comes down, for me, to finding good people and sharing. You have to share with your employees because the thing that makes you good is to give stellar service and promote consistency and continuity within your organization. If you have people that are with you 15 and 20 years and you share with them, they're going to give a level of service that nobody else is going to be able to get in the industry. So that was the key to our organization. That's what made us grow. And about 5 years ago, we saw the handwriting on the wall. We saw the shift in the marketplace, the construction marketplace, going to the open shop market and the non-union market. So we knew that we had to jump in with both feet. The complications with that is that we have a side of the business that we actually provide union labor in an outsourced capacity to a firm called EWBC, and we're signed with the BCA. Mr. Badame, down at the end of the table, probably was the smartest person in the industry to make his union labor efficient because Tishman was the first company to outsource their union labor. So Jay was smart enough to reduce his labor force substantially down to 20 or 30 laborers. You know, what Jay did was he outsourced his labor. So he reduced his labor force to the most important guys that were his labor foremen, outsourced the labor, and instead of carrying 200 laborers, carries 20. It's a brilliant thing to do. Plus he squeezes everybody for lump sums, so his labor number is consistent in his general conditions. All right, so Jay was the leader, and Tishman was the leader in dealing with that union labor market and thinking about how to make it efficient. But we saw the handwriting on the wall about 5 years ago that the non-union market, the open shop market was booming, and we had to do something about it because we could not, under the same ownership, provide union and non-union labor in double breast. That's a no-no. So what we did is we restructured the companies, and I basically handed off the union side of the company to one of my compatriots who I trust with my life, and he took and went along and is building substantially the other entities in the union side. I was in charge, because I'm the old guy, to get out there and beat the bushes and expand the non-union market, which we did. And one of our chief partners in it, who again, I gotta give applause to, was related. Because we actually had about 100 laborers in the field. And you know, you get the call, Bruce Beal wants to see you. So, you know, you gotta get to the labor in 10 minutes, you know? And you know, Bruce comes in and basically says, I want a fair wage program. Okay, well, what does that mean? Because I want to pay everybody at least $20 an hour. I want to give them $2 an hour in their 401k, and I want them to have full health insurance. It's very commendable. I think that's a great idea. But out of my 200 laborers, you have 60. So where am I going to get the other $2 million to pay the other guys the same freight? Well, there was silence at that point in time. I said, well, let me go back and take a look at it. So we go back and we take a look at it. We look at it, and we find out that we don't violate anything if we create another company. It can have the same ownership as long as it's doing the same work. So we were able to create Trade-Off, which was one company, and Trade-Off Plus, which was the fair labor wage company. And I got to tell you, the beauty of Trade-Off Plus is that 70% of our employees were in the joint, and that came out, and we gave them a second chance. With all that being said, these guys have excelled, because I have guys that went to college, got out of college, graduated from college, and they made, with overtime, $80,000 this year. And they come to you with tears in their eyes and they said, I never ever thought that I would be able to do this, to earn this money, because, and you know, it prevents them from going down the road. That was their only business they knew, you know? And they got a second shot in the American dream now.
Good for you.
Right.
And so it's a beautiful thing.
We put out a report every Monday morning that just covers what the contracts are signed at $4 million and above. And the reason we use that benchmark, $4 million and above, is we think that's a good, healthy number for what somebody would call luxury, and we started this years ago. Anyway, we like to report on contracts signed because we want to keep pace on what the appetite in the market is right now. And the problem with the closed sales reports, although they are very good benchmarks, they are retrospective, and that by the time a property closes in Manhattan, it can be months or years. So what's going on now? 2017, the first half was terrific, and the third quarter sunk. The last 2 weeks and this week have been pretty good. Overall, the whole year, if you compare 17 to 16, we're up 14% in the number of sales in condos and in the dollar volume. That's the good news. The not so good news is that we were running last year at 297 days, and now we're at about 424 days on the market. So it's taking a lot longer to sell the product. The other interesting statistic is that we are running now by the time a property goes into contract, it's 7 to 8% off the original ask. So we figure that 7 to 8% off the original ask, and it probably sells on contract at least 5 to 7% below that. So deals are being done 15 to 20% below the original ask. The end of the story is this: the market is overpriced. Developers are not adjusting their prices. They are not moving quickly enough, and it's a winners and losers market. The people who adjust and adapt are those who are going to sell. The other thing is that one has to understand that the luxury market is a collection of submarkets. So to really drill down and understand where you stand, you have to look at the particular area. For example, the Midtown corridor is very, very soft. Downtown is doing better, of course, than the Upper East Side. These are other things. And the other challenging thing, I think, going forward is it takes so long for a development to get done and come to the marketplace that often, by the time it comes to market, that design looks mature. We live in a world now that is moving very, very quickly, just as I stand here. Imagine that the sum of all medical knowledge doubles every 73 days. When you consider that Moore's Law, the speed of a chip was supposed to double every 18 months, it now looks like the speed of everything doubles every 18 months. Those are the consumers that we meet every day. They're very data-driven. They're more design conscious than ever. They're pickier than ever. So we are operating in a different world now.
We're going to come back to it. I love that chip stuff. Chuck, tell us what's happening in the development world. We've heard a lot about some of the issues that are taking place in the marketplace. Tell us what you see happening.
Well, we're mostly commercial office building developers. That's the mainstay of our company. We have probably around 6 million square feet in the metropolitan area. Our most recent project that we completed in 2013, fully leased, is 51 Astor Place. You get a chance to go down there. There's this big, any press people here today, by the way?
Yes.
Press?
Yes.
Okay. There's a big rabbit. I have another word for it, but I can't use it in public. But anyways, there's a big candy apple red rabbit, sculpture by Koons, Jeff Koons, which is gorgeous, and it just, if you go by at night, it's just wonderful. Anyway, so we are commercial real estate developers, very bullish on the office market, and there was a big concern a couple of years ago when Related started a big project over at the Hudson Yards. What's going to happen when the people in Midtown and downtown move to the West Side? What's going to happen? Okay, and we expanded our ownership of 1166 of the Americas. We repositioned 101 of the Americas. And We put in a new lobby at 1166. And what we're finding is that as those tenants have moved out of some of the buildings that not only that we own, but other owners own, there's a tremendous economic engine that's backfilling those spaces. Now, maybe it's not the 500,000 square foot tenant, but it's that 25,000, 50,000, 100,000 square foot tenant that we've been fortunate enough to get into our buildings. Vacancy rates are still running around 13%, give or take. And believe it or not, historically, that's the 20-year average for the city, about 13%. That's the magic number, so to speak. Hasn't moved a lot. But the one thing that we are experiencing today more than ever before is that as we move to buy properties, and there's a lot of properties that are available for sale, quite a few, but every owner thinks they're sitting on gold, right? And therefore the asking prices are insane, but there's a lot of capital out there chasing that product. So they can afford to go and chase that product at a much lower return because they can afford to. I'm talking about institutional money that's out there today that's willing to put their capital out for a lot less than we can in the private sector, so to speak. So we're still bullish on the market. We're looking right now at something like 5 office buildings, either to build ground up or renovate. And there's still a lot of activity on the tenant side in all of our buildings, which are mostly in Midtown and downtown.
I spoke earlier about Todd because it's true. They came out, the New York Times had an article about one of his buildings that he had designed that I thought actually he paid the New York Times writer because it was an unbelievable article. Todd, tell us a little bit about your thought process in general because you're doing some amazing things architecturally.
Thanks, Lou. So Lou's talking about 529 Broadway. It's the new Nike flagship down in Soho at the corner of Broadway and Spring. It's a 60,000 square foot new building. Our office, BKSK, we've kind of created this really great special niche that we've carved out to achieve really challenging approvals with the Landmarks Commission. This is just one of several recent examples in over 30 years. An amazing portfolio of these. I joined about 20 years ago, so I'm a second generation partner there. But most recently, we're really pushing technology with the within a historic context. So this is what we really explored at 529 Broadway, where we looked at the history of the site, as we always do, as all architects really do. But in this case, there was a 150-year-old previously existing 150 years ago, a hotel on the site. Many of you probably remember that corner in Soho. It was Cafe Bari, Steve Madden shoes. It was a 2-story taxpayer. But what we discovered was that it was actually a hotel 200 years ago that was chopped down to 2 stories in 1935 because of the Depression. So it became a taxpayer, but it left behind a 2-bay fragment on Spring Street, which had these incredible bushy eyebrow cast iron lintels to its punched openings. And we discovered that the hotel that was there, the Prescott Hotel, the Prescott House, it too was this massive, just 6-story, not giant, but 60,000 square foot masonry box with punched window openings. But miraculously, just next door is the Judge Foundation that we all know on Mercer and Spring, which really exemplifies the kind of zenith of cast iron architecture, where cast iron, only 20 years after the Prescott Hotel, which was built as a masonry box with punched openings with cast iron lintels, the Judd Foundation building was this incredibly open, almost proto-modern building with cast iron structure and giant areas of glazing. So we took those 2 buildings side by side and decided to tell a story of the entire cast iron district within one building. And with the use of very simple, kind of dead simple glass box, curtain wall building, 6 stories, we draped it with a open joint terracotta rain screen that, while on its side, on the westernmost edge where it kisses its long lost sister, that fragment of the hotel, It looks like a punched opening masonry building, but the masonry, the terracotta, the glazed terracotta, because it's an open joint rain screen, kind of twists and turns and dematerializes as it gets to Broadway and turns the corner on Broadway. It becomes a very glassy, modern building with cast iron loft building proportions that happen to have beautiful terracotta detailing. So the New York Times article really took off. It praised it. It said it's one of the most intelligent buildings around, so we were really thrilled. That, of course, is on our website, the first page. But we're really thrilled with our use of, because part of what tickled the reporter was our use of kind of gaming technology and movie-making, filmmaking technology, digital mapping of the old historical photographs to come up with new forms and new ornament for contemporary design.
But I will say that the details on that building are pretty spectacular. And in the New York Times article, you know, the writer spoke to various professors, by the way, and they were talking about different postmodern design, and they singled out your project as being, you know, something spectacular, something different. And in fact, it is. About construction for a second. Let's talk about hard costs. Where do we see hard costs going at this particular time?
Flat. You have the usual suspects rate, you know, on the union side, the 3.5% a year increase. Commodities we see as flat. You know, when oil is down, plastic pipe costs are relatively cheap. Copper is flat. Again, oil and gas, you know, at $40 a barrel, construction is pretty affordable because trucking, getting things to the site is affordable. When oil goes to $100 a barrel, of course, everything goes through the roof. So,
is there a lot of stuff coming out of the international market also that helps?
We still see a lot coming from China. We're seeing stone from Turkey. So international market is still very strong right now, certainly with the countertops, some cases kitchen cabinets, but you know, the basic bricks and mortar, the steel, the concrete, you know, 70% of the building, you know, curtain walls are coming from all over the world. People are buying it in Singapore, sending the mullions here, having the mock-up here, having the glass here. So coordinating all that is why we get our 1% on the cost of construction as our fee.
I was going to ask about the fees. Where are the fees going?
Chuck, just saying.
Where are the fees going right now?
The fees are still in the tank. You know, thanks to Peter Lair back years ago when he started a company called Lair McGovern that dumped the tank. You know, certainly you know, fees were 3%, then they got down to 1.5%. So you have to be able to layer things, layer offerings like insurance programs, parent corporate guarantees, SubGuard. So you have to layer on top incentives. As Ronnie said, it makes sense to incentivize the employees. When you have good employees, happy employees, the jobs go well. So at Tishman and Hunt on the building construction side, we give a piece of the upside on each of the projects dedicated to all the employees on the site. Mothership gets their piece, but the rest goes to the employees.
How do you see the labor market right now in terms of for these projects you're building? Enough labor around, or what?
I would say, again, on the union side, which is primarily what I deal with, I think labor is strong. There are people, you know, electricians who are out of work, but you know, the best folks, the problem we're seeing is the lack of qualified contractors. The labor force is there, but you don't have enough of the qualified trades and the foremen to run it. Structural steel, you have 2 or 3. Curtain wall, you're down to 2 or 3. Elevators are the usual suspects. So you have a limitation on the number of contractors you can go to.
Okay, and where do you see the non-union side going, at least in the city? Because this was one of the last, obviously, union towns.
Right now, if you walk Midtown, you know, 60–70% of all the work is going to open shop. I'm not sure it says, Ronnie would know more. I think the non-union model is not necessarily 100% non-union for the larger jobs, maybe the smaller jobs in the boroughs. But on the larger jobs, it's really open shop where the main trades who are capable of bonding the jobs are union, and a lot of the interiors. So I'm sure in some of the areas, curtain wall, they figured it out. Superstructure concrete, they figured it out. But again, if you get double-breasted, you've certainly been reading what Novelist has done in Sullivan. The unions are going hard after some of the trade contractors who have become double-breasted, but they haven't become double-breasted in the right way. They've mixed things. They've had one truck here and one truck there, and it's the same truck, and the unions have figured out, and there was a $76 million lawsuit that was assessed against the contractor, which is very severe. So if you're going to go open shop, double-breasted, you really have to do it right.
Talk to us about insurance costs, because that's become a big problem also. But you have various programs. But for normal people, normal companies, I think it's very problematic. And also bonds. Discuss bonds a second.
So right now, the subguard industry, everybody wanted subguard, which was contractor default insurance. The premiums were between 1–1.5%. Zurich was the prime member. They would insure a contractor on the project from default. $30 million per occurrence, $90 million in aggregate for the project. In the old days, the deductible for one default was $1 million. Now the deductible has gone to $2.5 to $3 million. Anything over $45 million, they will not enroll in subguard, and they virtually will not enroll any exterior enclosure because 75% of the defaults occurred on exterior enclosures. So hence, on any of the big projects, we get payment performance bonds. The cost is still around 1.5%, between 1 and 1.5% for a combination of subguard and P&P bonds. As to insurance, owners used to be able to get a very attractive rate for an OSIP, an owner's controlled insurance program, but those rates are approaching 10–11%. So because of the volume of work we do, we enroll people in a rolling CSIP at a much lower price. I won't give that out, but it's very competitive, Chuck.
I want to hear it later.
Yes, it'll be in a sealed envelope.
Whisper in my ear.
But the big issue that's confronting the city and the state is the scaffold law, 240–241, which is basically, if you know anything about the law, if a worker gets injured on a job site on a ladder, regardless of whether it's his fault, the contractor has ultimate liability. And that is increasing the cost of the insurance in New York City, New York State, where you don't have it anywhere else in the country. And we, along with BTEA, are trying to help overturn that. But of course, you have the labor lawyers who are saying no, no, no. So, and the unions are saying no, no, no. So when you talk about costs of construction, you layer all these things, and that's why it costs you $600–700 a foot to build an office building, $700–800 a foot to do a luxury condo, affordable housing, $400–500 a foot. So those are the ranges of the world. So we have to be competitive by offering low fees, but then also having some of the other tchotchkes that can put us above our competitors just by the volume of discounts that I can give below the line.
Talk to us a little bit about scheduling the projects. Are you finding the projects are taking a little bit longer to build, in particular, to get the sign-offs with regards to COs?
I mean, Ronnie can certainly talk. I think the new legislation that just passed is going to give us all agita. I think it's Bill 1449, I'm not sure.
1447.
1447, 48 and 49 are behind it. It really just means that everybody has to have between 40 and 50 hours of training on a project. It's really going to go into effect, I think, the first or second quarter of next year. It just means that the best squad, DOB, will have more law enforcement. So every job in the city will be shut down just by virtue of paperwork cannot be that perfect. We're building buildings, we have to be safe. And so ultimately, we're all going to have to put additional time in addition to weather, temporary heat. There's going to be stop work orders. I don't think there's going to be one project. There was a project downtown that had a fatality on Maiden Lane. I think it's been shut down for 6 weeks, and that could be shut down for months, which really hurts development.
Ron, you want to go a little bit further into some of the things that are happening, because the process itself is becoming problematic in my mind. In the old days, it used to take, it was a lot quicker to get a CRO. But now there's not only that,
There
but
were reasons for that.
yeah, I get it.
But,
Well, not the reasons that you want to mention, please.
Right.
And those guys ended up in the what do we call it?
On vacation.
On vacation.
They went to college
Yeah, they went to college.
for advanced degrees. The process has always been cumbersome. It's always been cumbersome. It's a nightmare. But it does work sometimes. And really, I gotta be honest with you, we do this as a living. And I tell you, as the industry, the key to the process is persistence. You can't hire a guy that has 500 other jobs,
Or a woman.
or a woman that has 500 other jobs, and goes to see somebody and takes the top piece of paper off his jobs, hands it to the guy. The guy says no. He takes that piece of paper, puts it on the bottom of his neck. Just doesn't work. When you give somebody service, you gotta give them service. That means you gotta go there with the goal of not taking no's against them. And you gotta be persistent, and you gotta push. And what happens is, the process within our industry is so bifurcated, it's crazy. You have, you will hire an expediter, and they're responsible for getting the construction sign off. But the plumber's responsible for getting the plumbing sign off, the sprinkler guy is responsible for getting the sprinkler sign off, the fire alarm guy is responsible for getting the fire alarm. And your expediter will say, oh yeah, here's the construction sign off, have the plumber call me when he gets the sign off. That is totally unacceptable. Totally unacceptable. If you're gonna take responsibility for the job, you take responsibility for the job. Now, it may cost a couple extra dollars, but that person has to go after the plumber, has to go after the fire alarm contractor, has to go after the sprinkler guy and get the sign offs. He can't let that lay. You have to service your client. That's all we have. We have people. We don't make widgets. Right? We have service.
Todd, tell us a little bit about what's happening in the industry in terms of some of the things that are happening in buildings, in terms of the energy code in particular, because that's a very important topic here.
It's very topical. The New York City Energy Code, as of 2016, is probably the most, if not one of the most aggressive in the country now. And a lot of our work, naturally, you're within striking distance of these really aggressive certification programs such as Passive House. We're getting a lot of inquiries about how to make buildings super efficient, and and some of it is driven by what the code is making developers think about. Because we explain, with the new codes, you have to, for example, insulate on the exterior of the building. You can't have these eyebrow slab buildings anymore. You have to tape the air barrier. You have to prove your R values to a whole energy audit committee at the building department. So 20 years ago, the energy code was not policed hard at all at the building department. The engineer just had to write a statement on the drawings that it complied. Now, the drawings, are both architectural and mechanical, are really gone over with a fine-tooth comb with the energy audit people at the building department. I think there's a group of a dozen people. We have to produce special drawings that show all the elevations and all the materials and all the R values. So one thing that it has led to in several other projects is the exploration of, if not the implementation of, Passive House, which is this very rigorous voluntary energy efficiency program for buildings that when you follow it, you end up with these super, super ultra low energy use buildings. And people they can't get over the savings. They're like 80% lower energy usage. So the hard costs for your mechanical plant are really smaller or much reduced. There are higher hard costs though up front for triple glazed windows, a little more insulation on the building, make sure everything's taped really well, individual ERV, energy recovery units in each apartment with finger ducts to every room. But that's just a little leap from where we see the industry, which is filtered fresh air for everybody, because people go to people like Donna, or they're insisting on demonstrably sustainable things like filtered fresh air is a really simple thing to give people in New York City. So we've done that for 10 years. So now it's filtered fresh air, but it's into every room, not just every apartment. We've been insulating on the exterior of the building for a while now. Now it's code. Now you add one more inch of that, you add a triple glaze to your windows, those individual units in the apartments, you're at Passive House. So this thing that started in Germany 20 years ago is now taking hold here.
Chuck, you mentioned that land prices are still very high. Do you see, as you're looking around at different properties, the trajectory perhaps changing in terms of the prices, or not yet?
No, what we're seeing is that although the prices are still high, they're a little bit lower than they were a couple of years ago, and the trajectory is kind of flattening out, but it's at a high level. So it's flat, but it's at a high flat, so to speak.
And you mentioned there's a lot of money out there.
Yes.
Talk about the different types of monies that exist out there.
You're talking about loan sharking? No.
No, not loan sharking.
Can't do that. I thought maybe I could get some help from my union friends here, non-union friends. There's institutional capital, the insurance companies that are out there. Some of the foreign investors is another source of capital. Lou, you're familiar with the EB5 fund, which is still alive and well. And living, I think, in your house, if I'm not mistaken. There are a whole host of mezzanine debt lenders out there today that they're lending, money at it. I hate to use the word reasonable at 8%, but they were running 17 to 22% in the old days, last year. And now they're probably in the 8 to 12% range for some of the stuff. Because again, there's this product out there, and there's a lot of money chasing that product.
Faith, Chuck is going to be building a building, and he has, he's getting ready to hire an architect, and he comes to you and talk and asks you about the retail, and what are the type of things that you would tell him that he should consider when he's designing his building?
Well, I would hope that we would get the opportunity to work with the architect on the design for the retail and/or community or any of the commercial space. Because retail is, although we have many star architects, I know, retail, for which they want the most value, is kind of the forgotten one. And then really, if you don't take into account that it's all about visibility with marrying the integrity, so we understand that. But then we have to take into account, most assuredly, the area. We get a lot of these new developments that are really very special buildings going into, I'll say, A, beautiful buildings going into B- or C neighborhoods, and then they say, Faith, we're going to get Gucci, right? No, we're not going to get Gucci, I'm sorry. But we're going to get lots of really good retailers. I think when we get called into these pitches, and we like to be in early on the development side, is that we like to work with the architect, with the developer. We listen to everybody. I think most brokers don't listen. I do a lot of listening because that helps me negotiate against
But
you.
let's say you're working. Let's say you're working with the architect. And,
yes.
And the architect is looking for some criteria from you. In other words, column spacing, floor to ceiling heights, things of that nature. What do you tell them? What do you tell them?
Well, depending on what also the developer envisions for their retail. Some of them just want it to be an afterthought. Others want to have it enhanced. We had a project we worked on the Upper East Side, and they built a beautiful building, but they put the columns really too close. Of course, ideally you want column-free space. Ideally you want high ceilings. But we know that this is all challenges. We talk a lot about the visibility, but it has a lot to do with the neighborhood and what they're going to marry the uses to, because not every use needs a 20-foot window. Yes, everybody wants visibility, but certainly, and especially with some of the brand stores, that's not necessary. So it really depends on where the neighborhood is, what the building is, who's going to go upstairs. The same with commercial, and because it all has to work together. It all really has to come in, and it has to work within the neighborhood. The other part of new development is we're doing this, and the neighborhoods keep changing. I mean, we're in the fastest changing city in the world. So you have to try to envision the neighborhoods. There are projects we worked on even downtown, and we really had to take the future out and look at everything happening around us. We're consulting on a project downtown in Fidei, and everything around us are new developments, L&M, whatever. So I have to see what's going on around us to see where we're going to be to really advise them. You can't, work in a tunnel. You have to look at it in a wider vision. I just like to say in terms of the market, and I say this to Ken, he said we're active. One of the most stable markets through this downturn has been Upper Manhattan. I have not compromised on any of the asking rents. We have not had a shortage of retailers that want to be there. And the community service and office deals being done from very well-established companies from Chicago, San Francisco, because we work the national market, have wanted to go to Upper Manhattan. And anyway, I have to say what's been done on 125th Street it's really arrived now. And to you, a community deal that we did this year, I just remembered, maybe Corey, you can remember the name, but it was an office space and almost part of a building for a program for prisoners returning to the workforce, and it was very unusual, brought to me by another of my team, but that was one of the very best deals that we're really proud of. We do everything. We like to be known for luxury, too. Those are the sexy deals the press writes about, but the real backbone are all of the community deals and all the niche retailers that are everywhere. But Upper Manhattan has been so stable. Nobody said, I say the number, they say yes.
Chuck, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of reinforce a little what Faith spoke about and mention a word that Donna said earlier. Development takes time. So we have a concept. We think it's a great concept. Commercial office building, retail at the base. We have a very successful retail component of a project we built on Warren Street, where we have Whole Foods and Barnes & Noble and Bed Bath & Beyond and Bank of America and so on. But there we took the advice of the retail consultant. Faith, it was not you, I'm sorry.
It's okay. I want to make every deal I know I can.
Yeah, but we provided the high ceilings. We provided the column-free space that the retailers wanted, and it rented very, very quickly. But again, that word mature is very, very important because it takes 2, 3, 4 years to get something from the drawing board that this gentleman just completed, and to get it up into the air and get it occupied, and to get the CFO, which is always a pain in the ass to get. But we live with that. So what we look for is the trend, okay? Are we pioneers in this particular area? We were told we were pioneers on Warren Street, okay, back in the day. And it worked out okay. We were told when we built 51 Astor Place that we were certifiable. We were crazy. Why are you building an office building at 51 Astor Place? You out of your mind? What's wrong with you? Okay, fully rented. And the retail there is phenomenal. Again, we paid attention to what the retailers wanted in that particular area. So we have CVS, we have a couple of the coffee shops, and Shake Shack just opened up last week. And they have the robots there taking your orders and stuff like that, kind of neat anyway. But the key is to have the vision to see what it's going to be later on. And that's where people like Faith come in and kind of fill in the blank for you.
And Ken, are you two also, because of UMEZ, do you find yourselves working together, you know, in the uptown area?
Yeah.
On the retail side.
Working with
Faith.
Faith? Yeah. Faith is a member of the Greater Harlem Chamber of Commerce, so she is omnipresent.
It was like a really important club to get into, you know that.
Yeah.
I think it was more important than getting into the Metropolitan Club. Well, that's the way your president makes me feel.
Right,
anyway.
right.
Okay.
No, you know, Harlem at the end of the day is still a village, and
Yes,
everyone knows each other.
It's a happening place, and you've been very successful, Faith, in Harlem.
But you know, going to point I think I was trying to make earlier is that rezonings reposition areas. I can remember the rezoning for 51 Astor Place, which was a site right across the street from Cooper Union. But 125th Street was rezoned in 2008. So it's taken almost a decade because, you know, obviously what happened in 2008 stopped everything. But now we have Whole Foods. And the cultural organizations are building. The Studio Museum is building a $150 million project. The old Lowe's Victoria, a project that we lent money to, is being built on the 125th Street side, and on the 126th Street side there are apartments. So be it Hudson Yards or East Midtown or a given parcel in Lower Manhattan, you know, the role of the Planning Commission is to really look at the context of neighborhoods, but see where growth can be accommodated and act accordingly.
Donna, you work frequently also with architects, and you want to. In other words, many times maybe you come after the process and that becomes dysfunctional for you. But what are some of the things that you look at when you look at plans that architects put together, and what are you looking for in terms of what people who are spending more than $4 million are looking for?
I would say I have some sort of rules of the road.
Yeah, give us those rules.
And the one is
You gotta
that
pay for them, Lou.
they're pretty
That's why
simple.
we're-
I like to keep it simple. The first is that you have to have at least one room with a wow factor. So that can be the great room, but you gotta have it. If it's luxury, it cannot be less than 10-foot ceilings finished. And I would say to the developers now, you really have to watch the finishes. They have to step it up, because what is being delivered now looks like Home Depot +1. The culture is changing very, very quickly, and I would support Todd in the passive house movement, because I do believe that our society is moving towards that, wanting green, environmental, conscious. They feel good about it. So I think passive is going to be the wave. The tallest passive house building right now is at Cornell Technion, and but we will see more of it. I mean, you're seeing it in the Bronx. You're seeing it in rental housing, where they want to save 85% on their energy costs, but you're going to see it in luxury housing. There's no doubt about it. People want to feel that they have fresh air and that they have good water. That's going to be very important in the culture. But listen, one of the problems with new development is that so much of it looks like the next thing down the block. They're not differentiating themselves. They're not telling us a story. They use the same materials or a relative thereof, or the same marketing people, or the same marketing materials. It's just, if you go around, it's getting to look too much of the same.
What do you think about green elements in buildings? In other words, by green, I mean real green,
I think
plants, etc.
I think that's where, I think that is a very important thing to embrace. I think as you go around the world, you're seeing many more of these green walls, much more integrating landscaping in, and it's amazing to me that developers put out these marketing materials, they put a penthouse, and they don't develop it. They put in an outdoor kitchen, they put in a couple of pieces of furniture, and the penthouse is worth millions and millions of dollars more, and they haven't done anything to landscape it. They need to step the game up, because I'm telling you now, the consumer is tougher than ever before.
Todd, tell us a little bit about those, not so much new materials, but maybe materials coming back. I usually don't compliment architects, as most people know. I usually am attacking architects. But I must admit, after I started to attack the cost of the building you were putting together, but there's one particular building, high-rise, that you took and you transformed the exterior. Even and I think it was shocking to many people, had to admit at the end, when people said, "What do you think?" I said, "I think this is great. This is a fantastic building," and everybody was totally shocked. Tell us a little bit about materials and the uses of materials and some of the things that have been around that you like to play with.
You're seeing a lot of terracotta back in use in very contemporary ways. You're seeing it on 57th Street in the super talls. You're seeing it in low-rise buildings. It's a material that has been around for hundreds of years. In New York City for hundreds of years, 100 years. It's really built, a lot of Manhattan is built with brick and terracotta. A lot of the masonry buildings that you think are brick, when you walk up and down the streets of Manhattan, are really terracotta. So this is a material that's really having a huge new resurgence. We use it as mostly a rain screen material that can live and breathe outside the enclosure of the building, so it can really do its own thing. It can twist and turn. It can be ornament, or it can be enclosure as well. We're also seeing new uses of wood paneling as an exterior material. There's a lot of impregnated, but in a sustainable way, wood panels that are used on exterior buildings that are insulated panels that are really standing up to weather in New York City. Our climate is very challenging. There's 100-degree, we have to say, 100-degree swings from winter to summer. It's an incredibly difficult environment to build in. We have deep foundations, and glazed brick is another one that is another historic building material that we've seen. We found artisans in mom and pop shops in Ohio, outside of Canton, that I visited, and they create these glazed bricks in these very small ovens that are produced, and they produce 5,000 of them for us for our Jefferson project on East 13th Street. So we like to explore natural materials and locally resourced as much as possible.
I'd like to thank our panel for coming tonight. It was a great panel. Please, a round of applause for our panel. Thank you all for